Well, good morning, everybody, and happy Saturday. I am so happy to be with all of you this morning. Today is Saturday, May 8th, 2021, and we are here this morning to talk about summer and field trip safety. I cannot believe it is May and we are about to enter summertime. The year kind of felt like it started off slow, and then all of a sudden, man, it just went lightning speed, and here we are at summertime. So awesome. I'm glad that you are all with me. I'm just kind of giving everyone a moment to get on board here, and I see lots of folks joining us. So very good, very good. Awesome. Well, we are here this morning. We are scheduled to be here from 9 to 12. We are not going to be here from 9 to 12. I'm going to tell you all that right now. Probably our presentation is going to be about an hour and a half-ish, maybe. And then you'll have your online worksheet to complete at the end of the training. So if this is your first time joining us, welcome. We're glad you're here. The way that this works is that we are live right now on May 8th. And so you can participate by asking questions in the chat screen. If you need additional information about the material we are going over, you can type that into the chat screen and I can answer your questions or give you additional information. Because we are live, this counts as instructor-led training with childcare licensing, which is 20% of your training hours that you're required to get. All right. This is also being recorded, and so if you were not able to join us live today and you're watching the recording, then that would be self-instructional training, which is still 80% of your hours, so that's all good. All right. If you come in late or you miss any part of the material that we're covering, it's okay. You can just go back and watch it again. All of our recordings are located on our Facebook page and then also posted on our website, all right, for future reference. At the end of the webinar today, I will post a link for you to complete an online worksheet. Those of you that are needing a certificate of completion, you will complete the online worksheet. It is 10 open-ended questions, and then you will pay the fee, which is $15 for this particular course, at that time, all right? I will try to tell you when we're talking about a worksheet question so that you can take notes and make sure that you've got the material down, all right? So there you go. That's how it goes. Good morning, good morning, good morning, everybody that's saying good morning. I'm so glad that you are all here. All right, so, I had a lot of debate with myself on how I was going to cover this material today. Now, when I scheduled this topic back in January, with the optimistic hope that we would be entering summer in a more post-COVID environment. I think we're in a good place. I really do think that we're in a good place when it comes to being in a post-COVID environment, but we're not exactly where we want to be just yet, all right? So, because I am recording this, I want to make sure that we cover, summer and field trip safety as if it was a normal world and everything was like it usually is. But I think it's important that we also cover some 2021 summer, issues and topics, and how we are going to deal with field trips and the post-COVID environment that we're in, all right? Now, let's go ahead and talk about the elephant in the room, and that is the pandemic and the restrictions that we are still facing in some situations. As far as childcare regulations is concerned, we're business as usual, all right? The emergency orders have expired. We don't have any additional restrictions or guidelines. It's pretty much business as usual as listed in the Child Care Minimum Standards. And I'm going to go over what is expected in the Child Care Minimum Standards here in just a little bit, all right? So if you're wanting to go on field trips this summer with your children, you're able to do that, all right? There's nothing preventing you from going on field trips with the kids. You definitely want to outline some enhanced health protocols, such as wearing masks, such as avoiding mixing with the public as much as possible, enhanced health practices on sanitizing and disinfecting your buses, pretty much everything we've been doing in the classroom for the last 14 months. You want to make sure that you have some documentation that is signed off on by your employees and parents that they are aware of these enhanced health practices. I'm a little anxious about those of you that are choosing to go on field trips this summer because, one thing that we have said a lot over the last 14 months is that you don't want to do anything that intentionally puts someone in harm's way, all right? Or you're knowingly placing someone at risk. This is where you're going to have some liability issues, okay? Taking the children on a field trip, it's a very gray area. When we talk about, are you knowingly placing someone at risk or are you putting someone in harm's way, all right? Now, you're going to have to take a deep, hard look at your particular area. What are the COVID cases looking like in your area? And some counties and some areas of the state, we're at a low, a big time low. We still have some hot spots in certain areas. These are things that you're going to want to look at when deciding whether or not you're going to go on a field trip. Are you going to be the only people there? Are you going to be exclusive? Or are you going to be mixing with the public? And I think that right there is probably the biggest factor. For 2021, if you can schedule exclusive field trips where your group will be the only ones at the establishment, and that establishment has documented health protocols that you can get a hold of, I think you're in good shape, all right? If you're mixing with the public, that's what gives me a little bit of anxiety, because we're just not there yet, all right? But we're going to talk about both as we kind of go through the material right there. I just want to go ahead and get the COVID piece out of the way because I know the questions are going to come up, all right? I've been asking a lot of programs, are you going to be taking field trips this summer? Are you not going to be taking field trips this summer? And y'all, it's a mixed bag of nuts. I would probably say it's a 50-50 number out there on people that are taking field trips and people that are not taking field trips, all right? The people that I have talked to that are scheduling field trips are only scheduling field trips that are exclusive, where they will be the only people in-house. I think that's smart, all right? I haven't talked to very many people that's going to be mixing with the public, all right? And I kind of think moving forward, we're going to start seeing a lot more of this right here. I will tell you that for my centers, and I typically have very, very large after-school programs at my sites, the problem we're having is no one will take us, all right, unless we're exclusive. So, the problem has been kind of solved for us, that there's just not a lot of places that will be taking us right there. Billy is saying, he's talking about going to the parks and doing outdoor field trips only. I think that's really smart, and I definitely would encourage to be outside as much as possible. The only thing that I want to throw caution to on that is that you want to check your city and make sure that they don't have an ordinance or restriction on the number of people at the park, all right? I have seen some areas that are prohibiting groups from entering the public parks right now. So we don't want disappointed children. We don't want frustrated caregivers. So make sure that y'all check that out before you go. All right. And again, it's kind of a 50-50 mix is what I'm seeing out there. All right. Good comments. All right. So let's just talk first. Again, I'm getting the ugly stuff out of the way. Let's talk now about the child care minimum standards for field trips. And I'm going to be talking summer safety and field trips kind of back and forth, so y'all will know that. All right? Y'all, and this is the thing that really kind of hurts my heart because, for 34 years of working in this industry, field trips have always been my favorite part of working in after-school programs. Some of my best memories have been field trips. Especially back in the early days. And so I absolutely love the field trip part of our business. Of course, last year not being able to go on a field trip, was very sad and disappointing. And this year having limited field trips, I'm really looking forward to hopefully, by the time we get to Thanksgiving and Christmas break and then 2022, we'll be back to normal on all of this stuff. We're just not there yet. All right, just not there yet. So, of course, you know that with child care regulations, if you are taking children off of your premises, so you're taking them off of your property, then your ratios change. So if you have infants through 2-year-olds, so 0 to 23 months, you got to have a 1-on-1 ratio. Now, hopefully, none of you are taking infants on a field trip. That scares me to death right there. I don't think any of you are doing that. But what I do see from time to time is putting the infants on the stroller or the bye-bye buggy, and you go out on a nice day and you're taking a walk, and you decide to go all the way to the end of the sidewalk. Once you leave your property, that is considered a field trip. So all of the stuff we're about to talk about applies, all right? So keep that in mind right there. I see Christina's talking about many people and companies will come to you now. I'm going to talk about that, okay? So I've got quite a bit to say about that particular topic, but you're right. And that's probably what a lot of us are going to be doing this summer, okay? 2-year-olds, you got to have a 1-to-2 ratio. So once again, I hope none of you are doing that right there, but if you are taking 2-year-olds on a field trip, you've got that ratio. 3-year-olds is 1-to-6, 4-year-olds is 1-to-8. All right, now some of you do take pre-K children on field trips, so you got to bump down to that 1-to-8 ratio. 5-year-olds are 1-to-10. All right, so again, be aware of those kindergarten age children that may be in your after-school programs. You're going to lower your ratio at that point, and then for your 6-year-olds and older, you'll run that 1-to-12 ratio. Okay. So that's the ratios. If you can run lower than that, absolutely make sure that you're running lower than that. Good morning, Annabelle. Hello. So many awesome people that are joining our webinar this morning. All right. The other standards that we have outside of your normal general responsibilities of caregivers and supervision, that make sure that you have a signed permission slip from the parents to take the child on a field trip, all right? And this has to include permission to transport. Now, most of you probably have this on your enrollment form or enrollment application, the permission to transport. But with the field trips, you want a field trip permission slip, all right? Now, what we normally do is we normally create a binder, very simple binder like this, and we put all of our field trip permission slips in the binder at the beginning of the summer. That way the parent can go ahead and sign every single individual field trip permission slip, and you've got it done, all right? But we kind of keep that binder right there by the sign in and out sheet. It keeps it really nice and clean, all right? The most important thing is that you have that signed permission slip, all right? Don't take a child on a field trip unless you have the signed permission slip. Y'all, that's a big time no-no, all right? Be careful with that. You need to have your emergency medical consent forms on you at all times. So you want to create an emergency binder, all right, that has all of your permission or your emergency medical forms in them. And I'm going to go over what you want to include in your emergency binder here in just a little bit. And this binder has to stay on the caregiver at all times. So invest in some backpacks or bags that you can slip this binder in, and they carry it around with them when they're at the park or the amusement park or the roller skating rink or wherever you're going, all right? Make sure that you keep this safe. There is a lot of confidential information in this emergency binder, and if stolen, people can perform identity theft on the information included. So don't leave it laying around. Don't leave it on the bus. You want to keep it on the body, all right? But I've actually worked with programs, coach programs that had their emergency binder stolen, and it was a mess, all right? People don't really think about that, but there's a lot of confidential information in there. Make sure you have a written list of the children that are on the field trip. Now, I've seen licensing get kind of hairy about this. They don't want a computer-generated list. They want a handwritten list that only has the children that are on that field trip that day. Okay, so don't just print a roster out of your ProCare or whatever software you use. You want to make sure you have that written list. So we do transition sheets, and I'll talk about those more in just a little bit too. So that is a good handwritten list of the children that are currently in your care. All right, you can actually download a sample of that transition sheet off of my website, timthetrainer.com, and go to Documents, which I did clean up yesterday, by the way. I worked really hard on that because it became a mess this year. All right, make sure you have your first aid kit. Your first aid kit is fully stocked and not outdated, and you want to have that in your backpack or bag also. All right, if you have any children with a food allergy, you need to have the food allergy emergency form. You're going to make sure that's in your emergency binder and that you're aware of that. Okay, even if your field trip does not have food involved in it, so you're not going to eat lunch at the park or have a snow cone or something, you still need to have that food allergy emergency plan in your emergency binder. And once again, if you go to my website, timthetrainer.com, and go to Documents, I have a sample copy of a food allergy emergency plan for you. This next one is a big one. So hocus pocus, time to focus. I need everyone's attention right here. All right. Each child must wear a shirt, name tag, or other identification listing the name of the child care center and the child care center's telephone number. So that t-shirt, that hat, that wristband, whatever you do in your program, the only thing that should be on that is the child care center's name and phone number. All right. I mean, if you have a summer logo or something, that's fine. But the center's name and phone number. Never put the child's name on these the shirts or the hats or the wristbands or anything. You never want to expose a child's name to the public. All right. Y'all remember Stranger Danger from back in the 80s? We all got that training on that. But I see this all the time. I'll go to the zoo, I'll go to the amusement park, and I see these kids' names, right across the front of their shirt, and I'm like, eek, and I'll even go up to the people, I'm like, why are you doing that? Why are you putting the child's name on the shirt? They're like, oh, child care licensing says we have to. No, they don't, okay? They say that you have to have the center's name and the center's phone number, all right? So please, please, please be careful with that, all right? The caregivers that are on the field trip must be easily identifiable by the children. So a really bright colored hat or a bright t-shirt, some fluorescent clothing or something, or some other type of identification, making it very obvious that they are the employed caregivers for that group. All right. But the kids need to be able to identify the caregiver over other people in the public, all right? So your common everyday clothing that you wear, you don't want to do that. You want something really bright and colorful. We usually do very, very bright fluorescent t-shirts, that all match right there. I'm going to talk about parent volunteers later on, but what I have done in the past is that my parent volunteers do have a separate colored t-shirt, a color that is different than what my caregivers are wearing. And that one I do put very big on the back of the shirt, parent volunteer. Because sometimes our parent volunteers don't behave the appropriate way And I want to make it very obvious that this is not one of my employees. This is a parent volunteer. But again, we'll talk about them later on, because I do encourage a parent volunteer orientation where they have to sign off on what they can and cannot do when they're helping us on a field trip. All right. But I can't tell you how many times I've received angry phone calls from a random person at the park. You won't believe what one of your employees is doing, and it's not one of my employees. It was a parent volunteer. All right. And then, of course, make sure that every employee that is on that field trip is current on their first aid and CPR. All right. And y'all know that changed in October of 2018. Everyone must have first aid and CPR. It's no longer one person in the group. All right. So that's basically it with the child care minimum standards. I wanted to get that part out of the way right up front. Now let's just go into some best practices on summer safety and field trip safety. All right. Again, I've been working in this business for 34 short years, and I've done a lot of summers, all right? Every summer that I hear the news that a child has been left on a van, or every summer when I hear the news that a child was left on the playground or left on a field trip, my heart hurts, all right? Common sense should tell you that this should be one of the easiest things that we do. You know how many children you put on the bus. You know how many children you get off of the bus. You know how many children you take to the park. You know how many children you bring home from the park. All right. But it happens every summer. We hear this, and sometimes it does not have a happy ending. All right. We actually have laws in this state that are named after a child that died on a field trip in a licensed child care facility. Very, very sad. So, with that being said, I have some pretty strict processes on loading and unloading children on and off of the van or the bus, okay? And I do train my employees on this at the beginning of every summer, and hold them accountable, all right? So there's no wiggle room on this right here. It's pretty serious stuff, all right? So whether you have a bus or a van, as far as child care regulations are concerned, as long as that bus or van was built to carry people, to carry groups of children, and that's important, groups of children, then, licensing is kind of hands off on that right there. I don't want to get too far down this rabbit hole because it's a whole separate training that we could do. But the passenger vans are not certified by the National Transportation and Safety Commission. And so if you were to have an accident and a child was to be injured in one of those passenger vans, you could have some big time liability on your shoulders. All right. But again, that's a whole nother training. The minibuses that were built to transport young children, that's the safest way to go. All right. Now, some of the protocol that I recommend, all right, in keeping children safe and accounted for. Children should never enter or exit the vehicle alone, all right? There should always be an adult that is helping them on and off of the bus. That first step off of that bus is a pretty big step. And for some of our small, petite children, I've seen them go face first, onto the concrete. You need to have an adult that is there paying attention to the children getting on and off of the bus and helping them, being compassionate and understanding that that's a big step for them, and we don't want to rush them, and we don't want to use body language or a tone of voice that could create an accident, all right, for trying to rush that child on and off of the bus. All right. Now, child care licensing, when we talk about transportation, they are going to tell you that children must be loaded or unloaded at a curbside. All right. You can't park the bus in the middle of the parking lot and then walk the children across the parking lot. All right. They have to be loaded and unloaded at a curbside. This is both at your facility and at your destination. Okay. I just was talking to a program yesterday that had a little, I guess it was their pre-K kids maybe, that they took them to a local zoo, and the zoo wouldn't let them park their van with all of the other school buses. Told them they had to go to general parking. There was a little bit of some drama with that. Well, not only do you have them parking really far away and having to escort the children to the entry of the zoo, but you have a possible minimum standards violation, because now you're walking those children across a parking lot. All right. So, what this particular center needed to do was to drive the van to the entry, unload the children, caregivers stay with the child, and then whoever's driving the van needs to go park it and walk back by themselves. All right. So, hopefully with your child staff ratio, you've got enough adults to be able to do that. But you need to take that into consideration when you're staffing. All right. Never leave a child unattended on a bus. Again, this should be common sense. I have seen a bus full of kids where the driver gets out and walks over to an information booth or whatever, and they're a good 15, 20 feet away from the bus. All right. That's leaving the children unattended, folks. All right. When you step out of that bus, they're unattended, even if you're standing right next to it. So, I always encourage, if possible, a second adult on those buses, so that you've got the driver that can focus on safe driving. Their attention should be on the road. All right. And then your second adult is supervising the group of children, if that is possible. That is best practice. All right. Now, of course, you need to also make sure that your ratios are maintained at all times. All right. So depending on the size of your bus, if you have a 14-passenger bus, or if you have a larger commercial driver's license type situation, you want to make sure you're maintaining those ratios. Now you're gonna maintain normal classroom ratios while you're on the bus. Your field trip ratios will go into effect once you reach your destination. All right. So in my previous life, I used to work in programs that we had 48 passenger buses. All right. So making sure that we were staffing that bus with enough adults was always, a big issue right there. Now I just do 14 passengers. All right. I've always said, I will never own a 48 passenger bus again in my life. I will have a whole fleet of 14 passengers, just because those big buses are a nightmare. All right. When you're loading and unloading children on and off of the vehicle, all right, it is a very, very big recommendation that the vehicle is turned off. All right. Now I know this is what I hear from people. Well, we want the air running. It's hot. All right. Sorry, you're going to have to just deal with it. But especially if the adult is escorting the children on and off of the vehicle, and there's nobody sitting in that driver's seat, you definitely do not want that vehicle running. All right. I have seen situations where the driver left the bus running. They were not sitting in the driver's seat. Kids were going on and off of the bus, and as one little girl she was actually getting on the bus, she tripped on the top step, and when she went to fall, she grabbed the gear shift and pulled it down and put the bus in motion, and there was nobody in the driver's seat. All right. But think about it. If you trip on that first step and you start going down, you're going to reach to grab something to catch you, and that gear shift is right there. All right. So very important that vehicle is turned off while running, when loading and unloading. Now, to help with the heat situation, one recommendation we have right now with COVID, you want the windows to those buses and vans open if possible. All right. At least, every other window, open if you can. But with the pandemic, of course, this is something we've been practicing in our classrooms. You want as much fresh air flowing as possible. All right. So, having those windows open, and I know it's Texas. We're about to get into, the 100-degree weather, but these are things you're going to have to take into consideration right now. All right. Whenever I'm, whether it's a field trip or whether it's after school care, always identify children by sight and sound, all right? Do your name to face. So when you're helping the children on the bus, say, hello, Terry. Oh, look at that pink shirt you're wearing today. That's really cool. Blanche, you're here, Blanche. Are you excited for the field trip? Marissa, hey, Marissa. But, not only call them by their name, but make some type of comment that grabs their attention, all right? That's going to help you with your attendance tracking right there. But again, when you've got your roll call sheet, don't sit there and go, all right, well, let's see here. I remember Johnny getting on the bus. I remember Mark getting on the bus. Oh, I definitely remember Sally. And I see people all the time that take roll based on memory, all right? Well, our memory isn't as good as it used to be. And you might be remembering the last field trip or yesterday when that child was in attendance. Make sure you do your name to face, all right? And, I see you. Look them in the eye whenever you're checking that roll. I see you. This is also important for, for lots of different reasons, but the child needs to know that you know that they're there, okay? So don't rush your attendance tracking process, okay? I know you got places to go and things to do, but never rush the attendance tracking process. Take your time, breathe, look them in the eye. Make sure that child is accounted for right there. Always check their seat belts. All right. Y'all know that when you go to the amusement park, you go to Six Flags or SeaWorld or whatever, they actually come and tug on the seat belts. They tug on the bar. Make sure that it's latched and tight. You need to be doing the same thing. Okay. Walk up and down that bus or that van, making sure their seat belts are on. They like to hide it and they like to try to trick you. All right. They need to do that. So, if you are driving a passenger van, definitely a huge risk management tip here. Don't ever let children sit in the front seat of the van, all right? I'm going to guess, those of you that have passenger vans, that your insurance company probably prohibits this. All right. If you go back and look at your policy and look at some of the rules that you have to follow to maintain that policy, you're probably going to see that. All right. But a child sitting in the front seat of that passenger van, there's a lot of liability right there. Airbags that could go off, doors that could come open and that child go out. It's some bad stuff. I'll tell you, this has been like 1989, okay, this has been a while ago, but I know of a program that had 2 children sitting in the front seat of the passenger van, did not have seatbelts on, and in order to get into this program, you had to make a U-turn in a big busy street to be able to get to the parking lot of the program. And when this driver was making the U-turn, the door flew open. I don't know if the child opened it or if it wasn't closed all the way. I don't know what the situation was, but the passenger door came open and 2 children went tumbling out into the middle of the street. And they were injured pretty badly. All right. So, I still have that scenario stuck in my head. And, when I do see people in the passenger seat of the van, I freak out right there. All right. Here's another really big risk management tip that I really want all of you to take into consideration. When you're on field trips or your normal before and after school pickup, never let the children fall asleep. Okay? Keep them awake. Sing songs, play an I Spy game. All right. Do some question and answer, some fun question and answers. But try to keep the children awake. Don't let them fall asleep. The reason why I say this is that 99% of the time when you hear about situations where children were left on vehicles, it's normally because the child fell asleep. And when you go to get the kids off of the vehicle, they don't get off because they're asleep. All right? A child that is awake will get off the vehicle. All right? They don't normally intentionally stay on the vehicle when everyone is getting off. So, be aware of that right there. And especially if you have kids, like my daughter, for example, now she's about to turn 26, but when this is actually still true, actually. That girl, the moment she would sit in a car, she went to sleep. From the time she was an infant all the way to now, she still does it. You put her in the car, she's out, all right? I was really afraid of when she started driving. I'm like, you can't sleep when you drive, okay? But, she's just one of these people that the car puts her asleep. And so you're going to have kids like this too. So that's a big risk management tip right there. Make sure you're taking roll, you're doing your name to face before you get on the vehicle, once you are on the vehicle, and then again when you come off of the vehicle. Make sure that you're doing your name to face, all right? The way we typically do it, let's grab this right here, is that, on my roll call sheets, I'll do something like, they're on the bus, okay, they're off the bus, and then they're in the classroom, okay? Or they're on the bus, they're off the bus, they're at the field trip destination. And so that's how we kind of do it with our roll call sheets. And so whenever I'm auditing or doing a spot check, in my after school programs, I'm looking for all three of those markers right there. All right. Another really big risk management tip that I strongly encourage y'all to consider is that you always have at least 2 adults walk those vehicles after the children are unloaded. So the driver or the adult passenger walks the vehicle right there, and then a second person. So in my world, my policy is that a member of management has to walk every vehicle after the children are unloaded. All right. I want 2 adults to be accountable for that vehicle being empty. All right. So we have 2 people. Now I require, and this is just my policy, a member of management has to go on every field trip. So director, assistant director, or whoever. But there has to be a member of management on every field trip. So that way, again, even when you're at the field trip destination, you have that second adult that can walk that vehicle. And in my case, it's a manager. All right. So, yes. Of course, you cannot operate a cell phone while you are driving that vehicle. So let's talk about interacting with children while you are driving the vehicle. It is a state law that you cannot be on your cell phone while you're driving. That includes texting, all right? I encourage your company to have a policy that you also cannot use handless devices such as Bluetooth devices, or those type of things. You shouldn't be talking on the phone, even if it's hands-free, while you're transporting children. All right, your focus should be on driving and on the kids. If you have an emergency medical situation and you do need to use the phone, you need to pull over into a parking lot or safe area to be able to use that phone. All right. Make sure you have positive interactions while you're on that bus. Keep it upbeat. Remember, body language and tone of voice is 77% of communication. Keep it fun. All right. This should be a fun experience for everybody. We shouldn't be yelling and screaming and threatening, while you're on that vehicle. While you're driving your vehicle and you're going to your field trips, remember you're a moving billboard for your school. And you got a lot of people looking at you, and they can see your negative interactions even if they can't hear you while you're driving that vehicle. All right. Yes. Oh, good point. This includes being at a stoplight. All right. So, I do this all the time in my personal vehicle that, I always put my cell phone in my passenger seat while I'm driving. But when I come to a red light is when I'll pick up my phone and see what's going on in the world. And then when the light turns green, I put my phone down and, I'm a rule follower like that. Not on the bus though. Okay, you're going to keep that cell phone put away even when you're at a red light right there. Okay, have age-appropriate conversations with the children, and you might want to role play this before the field trip. Do some role playing on what type of conversations do you have with the kids. Get them excited about the field trip. Get them excited about the experience that they're about to have, so you can have those age-appropriate conversations. I know that, back when I used to do field trips, every single field trip that we went on, we had so many different songs that we would sing in the bus that were bus related. And I never did the Wheels on the Bus Go Over. No, we did other songs right there. Age appropriate songs that were fun and the kids got all involved. And so that was good stuff right there. And I've already said that if it is possible to have a second adult on that bus, that's always the best thing to do. All right, if it's possible. Let's talk really quickly about emergencies and what to do if your vehicle breaks down. All right. If you have a vehicle emergency or your vehicle breaks down, the children are always your first priority. All right. The broken down vehicle or the damage to the vehicle is not your number one priority. Children come first. All right. If you have any injuries or anyone that is perceived to be injured, call 911. All right. Contact your supervisor or your facility immediately. Let them know of the situation that's going on. Now, in an emergency situation, when you're broken down and you're on the side of the road, now is the time that you can use this phone. All right. Remember, my state dictates your state. All right. So we got to maintain that composure. Stay calm. All right. Because the children are going to react to your composure. All right. Reassure the children that everything is going to be fine. Make sure the vehicle is in a safe place, that you are not pulled over or in a dangerous area when you have a van full of children. If possible, make sure you move it to a safe place. Now, sometimes that's not possible. I was on a field trip one time where we broke down in the middle of the interstate. That was a crazy experience right there. Again, this was really a long time ago before we had cell phones. Back when we used to carry business cards with a quarter taped to the back of it. I actually still recommend that, even though good luck finding a payphone. But this is how we used to do it back in the day. We would carry business cards with a quarter taped to the back of it, so that if you needed to run to a payphone to call your school, you had what you needed. All right. Or if you had to, flag down somebody on the road and they say, how can I help you? Here's a business card. Go call my boss. All right. That's how we used to do it. All right. Do not allow strangers to assist in vehicle maintenance. So if your bus does break down, we have some very kind, people that want to come up. Well, let me take a look at it. All right. And Grandpa opens the hood and wants to start working on your vehicle. Sir, I appreciate your kindness. We got this. Okay. We're going to get this taken care of. If you have a strange person that starts working on your vehicle, you got some major liability going on right there. All right. If they were to be injured or something was to happen, you're going to be held liable, and that's not going to be pretty. All right. Or they could cause more damage than helping. Whenever you do have someone performing maintenance on your vehicle or repairs are being made, the children should not be on board. So if you can get the children off the bus in a safe area, that is best case scenario. Now, if you're on the side of the road, you definitely don't want to put 14 children on the side of the interstate. All right. But you shouldn't be performing maintenance on the vehicle right there anyway. All right. Let's shift gears now and talk about what to bring outside when you're on a field trip, or let's talk summer safety now when you're going out to the playground. So this is applicable to all age groups, so infants, toddlers, pre-K, school-age children. During the summer months especially, make sure you've got a fanny pack or a backpack or a bag that is your outdoor bag, and you're taking this outside with you. Of course, you want your standard first aid supplies, your Band-Aids, your gloves, your tissues, your plastic bags, your hand sanitizer, incident reports, and a pen, all right? If you have an accident on the playground, you want to make sure you can fill out that accident report right away, all right? And so instead of waiting until you get inside, because then you get busy when you get inside and it doesn't get done. Also, make sure you have a good supply of drinking water, all right? Drinking water with applicable cups and in a trash can for those cups to go into. Now, these days, we're doing a lot more with water bottles, all right? Water bottles that are for each individual child. If you have that, and I see people walk out with like a dish bucket with all of the kids' water bottles that are filled up. Either way, it is Texas. It gets hot out there. We don't want children to dehydrate, all right? We want to make sure they've got water available to them, okay? So there you go. Now, also, when you go out onto the playground, you need to have your emergency binder, all right? Your emergency notebook with the children's health information, their emergency release form. And I always recommend that, on your emergency release form for your emergency binders, always have a current photograph of the child attached to it. All right, whether this is playground situation or field trip and transportation situation, both. All right, if you were to have an incident and let's say you are on a field trip and you were in an automobile accident, maybe someone T-boned that bus and hit them right there on the side. Driver's out. All right, someone's got to be able to assist those children. And when the emergency personnel show up and you've got a child that is allergic to sulfa drugs, that emergency personnel needs to know, it says here that Shay is allergic to sulfa drugs. Now, which one of you 14 kids is Shay? All right. Well, when they're scared and injured, they're all going to be Shay. All right. So that current photograph is really, really important. All right. I also encourage you to have a health form and an emergency form on your adults too, all right? The driver or adult passengers with their picture as well. Because once again, if you were to have an incident and the emergency personnel were to show up, they need to be able to identify and properly assist that adult as well. Okay, so that's important. Playground, same thing, all right? You could have an incident in your program where you have to evacuate your playground or you have to shelter in place, and you don't have the opportunity to run back into that building, all right? Y'all remember, it's a crazy world that we're living in right now. Lots of things could happen. You want to make sure you have your emergency binder with all of the applicable information, even on the playground. We had a situation about 6 years ago now at one of my facilities where my school sits. We have an office building that's right behind us, and there was a high-speed chase, and this car was running from the police, and there were all these police cars after him, and I guess he decided he was going to try to escape the police by coming through the alley in between us and the office building, and it was actually our trash dumpster stopped him. He ran into our trash dumpster trying to go through the alley. And so when the car smashed into the trash dumpster, all of these police cars, are right behind him, and they immediately jump out of their police cars, with their guns and with the suspect and everything. And here we are with, a playground full of 3-year-olds. And it happened like seriously that fast. Well, when the police jumped out of the police car, they immediately started screaming, "Get the kids inside! Get the kids inside!" And we went into our crisis plan and shelter in place, and it was actually amazing. I went back after it was over and watched the video footage because we have cameras on our playgrounds, and I was so incredibly impressed with how quickly the teachers got the kids, off of the playground. So, everything turned out fine. We were very lucky and very blessed because it did turn out fine. But what would have happened if that guy that ran into the trash dumpster that was being chased by the police would have immediately jumped out of that car, turned around, and started firing? All right, and it turned into a shootout right here with a playground full of 3-year-olds. It could have gone bad. All right, that emergency binder is critical. Okay, so make sure that you're taking those things out on the playground. I have a whole training that I've done on playground supervision. So if you want more training and more information on proper playground supervision, you can go back and watch that. We'll talk about some playground supervision right here. Especially during the summer months when it is a little hotter outside, you need to be very, very aware of the condition of the children and what activities they are involved in. You want to make sure that you're paying very close attention to signs of heat exhaustion, and we'll talk about those in just a little bit. But that proper playground supervision is critical, all right? And, we already talked about a lot of you are probably going to be spending a lot of your field trip time at parks, this year. So keep all of this in mind right there too. Zone out. All right, make sure you're zoning and adults are spread out. All right, now years ago, back when I was a director in corporate childcare, I got so frustrated with supervision of the playground that I actually drew a map of my playground and said, okay, if there's one teacher on the playground, you need to be in this general area. If there's 2 teachers on the playground, one needs to be here, one needs to be here. If there's 3 of you, one here, one here, one here. And I actually had to create zones and tell people where they kind of needed to be in that general area. You need to be moving around and supervising. You're not just standing there, looking at that. And remember, your playground is a big old billboard for your program, and there's a lot of people that can see you and hear you when you're out on that playground. Before you take on the responsibility of any group of children, you always need to know your building premises and be aware of your surroundings, all right? So whether you're going to a park on a field trip or your own playground at your facility, you need to be aware of the premises, all right? So if you're doing a field trip to the park, my recommendation is that every adult that's going to be on that field trip needs to go to that park first, all right, and walk around, explore the area, become very familiar with the premises. You cannot properly supervise children and make sure they're accounted for if you don't know where all of the blind spots are. You don't know the premises and the design of the playground equipment. A lot of times when we do field trips, we go to these big castle kingdoms and these ginormous playground structures that the community has built. They're a lot of fun. I love them, all right? But they got a lot of blind spots. They got a lot of areas where children can get lost, that bad people could be hiding and, do some bad things to our kids while we're there. You need to be aware of all of these areas, okay? Now, if you can do it safely, get down on your hands and knees and crawl around your playground. You're going to be able to see the playground from the child's point of view. And I think that's really important, all right? Rather than a 6-foot point of view, we want to see that playground from a 3-feet point of view, okay? So look around right there. Always make sure that you kind of position yourself, or at least one adult is positioned close to the gate or the door that goes onto the playground. You want to be able to supervise if children are attempting to go in or out, or sometimes going in or out, and you also want to be aware of who is coming on to the playground. All right. Now, if we're on a field trip, then you want to have at least one adult that is positioned near the entry of the park or the destination that you're at. So again, you can monitor who's coming in and out of that facility or that park. If you see someone that is coming on to the premises that appears to be harmful, all right, or someone that has negative intent, you want to be able to get those kids off of that playground or away from that situation. So you've got to be very aware of your surroundings and the people that are around you. Okay, I think that's very important right there. Okay, not just on your playground, but on a field trip. All right. Make sure that, again, you're monitoring that door. If you have parents that are picking up children, from that playground door, you want someone there that can greet that parent. Make sure that you're monitoring when children are leaving. Sometimes, especially with our bigger programs, we have the teachers that are very focused on supervision and interaction with the children. A parent walks out onto the playground, grabs their kid, leaves, and doesn't say a single word to you. And then you're like, where's Tara? Where's Tara? And you're looking and panicking trying to find Tara. Well, mom came and picked her up. No one noticed, all right? So make sure you've got an adult near that door or entry area so that you can greet those parents, have them sign their child out, have that communication, but be aware that they have departed. Now, I'm probably jumping ahead right here. I'm going to go ahead and say this. We do have a policy at our schools that parents are not allowed to drop off or pick up their children on a field trip. All right, and that's a big one right there. When you have parents that are dropping off or picking up children on a field trip, you are creating a big risk. All right, that's when you're going to make attendance tracking errors and children are going to be left behind or unaccounted for. So if you've got a field trip scheduled for Tuesday, from 1 to 4, and Susie has a dentist appointment at 2, then Susie doesn't come that day, all right? But, we have a pretty strict policy on that right there, all right? And then, of course, your normal classroom ratios, you're going to follow when you're out on your playground at your facility. Those of you that can run lower child staff ratios on your playground, that's wonderful. I strongly encourage that. And right now we are still, in a post-pandemic world. Even though we are no longer under emergency orders with Health and Human Services, you definitely want to avoid mixing groups or cohorting groups when possible. All right. Now, I always like to cover what outside time is not, all right? Outside time is not a break time for staff. It's not a time for you to lean up against the wall and visit with your coworkers. I was just coaching a program that's having some, I'm choosing my words wisely right now. They're having some negativity issues, and basically the teachers are gossiping and stirring the pot with each other while they're out on the playground. And I'm like, well, we got several issues that need to be addressed right here. Number one, if they're gossiping and stirring the pot, they're not supervising the kids. There's no supervision right there. Then we got the whole morale issue and the gossiping issue that needs to be dealt with. All right. The teachers that go outside and run, kids, run, energy blow off time for the kids. Now, we do need to have vigorous to moderate physical activity that is planned and organized out on the playground. Y'all know that we have new guidelines from child care regulations on that. But it's not just about blowing off that energy. It's doing it in a constructive way. And outside time is definitely not the time that you take your lesson plan outside to work on your lesson plan for next week. So it is not a staff planning time. I can't remember what the statistics are. It changes from year to year. So I'm just going to say, the majority of the incidents that we have in our licensed programs happen on the playground. All right. So that's where we really need to be aware of what's going on, what the children are doing, what they're capable of. All right. Sight, sound, awareness, proximity. All right. All of these things are important, especially on the playground. Now it is, it's already hot outside. It's only May, and it's already hot outside. I actually had a trip to Orlando earlier this week. I had to go to Orlando for business, and it was hot. Holy cow, it was hot. And I was like, ooh, here it comes. It's summertime. And I came home, and it wasn't much better. It wasn't much better. But I want to talk about signs of heat exhaustion. All right. Now we've already had some conversation, making sure that you've got lots of water available for the kiddos. We want to keep them hydrated. Adults too. All right. Now again, in my experience, when I have had experience with individuals that have suffered from heat exhaustion, it's usually the adults, not the kids. All right, that we have heat exhaustion issues with. So make sure that you're drinking that water, you're staying hydrated, you're aware of each adult's circumstances that you can keep them hydrated. But for the kids as well. Pale and clammy hands, heavy sweating, fatigue, weakness, dizziness, headache, nauseous, muscle cramps, vomiting, fainting. These are all signs of heat exhaustion. The most common signs of heat exhaustion that you see is the heavy sweating, the weakness, and the dizziness. All right. So if you have a child that comes to you and is complaining of being dizzy or complaining that their tummy is hurting and they feel like they're going to throw up, we need to pay attention to that, all right, because those are very common signs of heat exhaustion right there. The vomiting is in a very extreme situation, but we have had that happen, all right. Some kids, the moment they get hot, they throw up. So you need to be aware of those situations. How to prevent heat exhaustion? Encourage kids to drink a lot of water. I'm just looking at my notes right here, and you can tell where my state of mind is right now. I just have encouraged kids to drink. We should probably add water to the end of that sentence right there. It just kind of caught me off guard. Squirrel. All right. But encourage kids to drink, water as much as possible. Offer fresh fruit. Fresh fruit is a great way to help prevent heat exhaustion. So when you're looking at your summer snack menu, as much fresh fruit that you can throw in there, the better. Those of you that have parents that are going to be providing lunches and snacks, encourage that fresh fruit as part of their daily meal. The little hats that have the cooling in it, they sell a lot of those these days. The water hats or cooling hats are great. If you have the opportunity to play in the shade, definitely want to play in the shade. Now, I have some outdoor guidelines on my website, timthetrainer.com, under documents, if you want to see a sample outdoor guideline. We go by heat index and wind chill, typically. And I have it on a sliding scale. So, typically we go outside 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes in the afternoon. But as the heat index gets higher, we may only go out for 20 minutes. We may only go out for 15 minutes, 10 minutes. But still, if that heat index is super high, we still like to get them outside for at least 5 minutes. They need the vitamins from the sun. They need the fresh air. We got to get them out there. Now, the other thing, when you're determining weather permits and when is a good time to take the children on the playground and whatnot, shade is a big factor. Some of you are very blessed that you have nice shade structures. Some people don't have those, but you want to take that into consideration. We kind of have a difference between outdoor play and shade play, for some of our kids right there. I misread that comment the first time. Look, Sometimes I see people take water in a squirt bottle outside and they're like spraying the kids down with water, all right? I don't recommend that you do that, all right? I have actually seen programs get cited by licensing for squirting the kids in the face, all right? That could be very harmful and intimidating to the child, all right? So there you go. All right. Play in the shade. Many of you, it's probably that time of the year. We usually do this in the middle of May, where we start adjusting our outside times. So kids are going outside as early as 7 o'clock in the morning so that they can get their outside time before the heat of the day. All right. And you start getting into the weather permit situation. Okay. Cool off as frequently as possible and use appropriate sunscreen for that child. Be aware of skin allergies. Make sure you've got a sunscreen permission slip that is signed by the parent, and you apply that sunscreen. Now, the thing about sunscreen, when we talk about summer safety, is that I want y'all to read the back of the sunscreen bottle or the tube, all right? Whether it's lotion or spray. You're probably going to notice that almost every one of them will tell you that sunscreen needs to be applied to the child 30 minutes before they go outside. Okay? And I see this all the time where teachers are lathering up kids out on the playground. It ain't going to do any good, folks, all right? That sunscreen needs to be applied at least 30 minutes before they go outside. So make sure you're reading into that, looking into that, and sunscreen is applied appropriately. What I really like to recommend is that the parent applies the sunscreen before they bring the child in, all right? That's going to take the risk and the liability off of your shoulders. You really want to avoid your caregivers rubbing their bare hands all over that child's body. That's just opening you up for a possible allegation. We want to avoid that. If you have an individual that is suffering from heat exhaustion, make sure Gatorade or one of these sports drinks that is good for hydration. Always have a nice jug of Gatorade that is to be used in emergency purposes or for emergency purposes only. Make sure you're checking food allergies right there. The good old-fashioned original green Gatorade is my favorite. That's the safest one out there. When you start getting into the red fruit punch Gatorade, then you start running into food allergy situations, especially if the child is allergic to red dye. You want to be aware of that. Good old-fashioned original Gatorade is what I really like. Obviously, offer water or fruit juice is good for the kids right there. Put them in a shaded area and get medical attention if the symptoms persist, all right? Make sure that you're contacting the parent as well. Once again, with all of this treatment, be aware of the child's allergies that they may have. All right? All right, so there's some playground safety here in the summer and some ways that you can do that. Oh yeah, the lemon lime Gatorade, yes, that's my favorite anyways. Let's talk about field trip pre-planning. So some things that we can do with the kids before we go out on the field trip. I always like to talk to the kids about the field trip or the activity that you're about to do. Now, a lot of us, like you said, probably not going to be doing a whole lot of field trips this summer because of the pandemic. You might be having visitors coming into your program instead. But talk to the kids ahead of time. Remember, even though they're school-age children, they still need predictability. They don't like to be blindsided. They don't like to be surprised. So talk about what's going to happen and be excited about it. You can't sit there and go, oh, well, we got to go roller skating today. Oh, I hate roller skating. You better not push me down. I don't know why the director keeps scheduling this field trip. I hate it. No, you need to be an excited participant. You need to be excited about the visitor that's coming in, all right? Talk to the kids. They're going to be more willing to meet the expectation when they know what's coming, all right? Let your children know what the expectations are. When we talk about supervision and interactions, that changes from field trip to field trip. All right. Let them know what the expectations are, especially if you have limitations, some things that you can't do. Make sure they know about it in advance, that there are certain things that we're not going to be able to do, and here are some things that we can do. All right. Now, again, I'm talking normal summer situations here, but we used to go to Six Flags a couple of times every summer. We used to go to the water parks, every summer. Well, even though that was something we did every single summer here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, we did go to Six Flags, but there were certain rides that I did not let the kids on. Some of the bigger roller coasters, the scarier roller coasters, were prohibited rides for the kids. You need to let them know about that ahead of time. The water parks. Nowadays we've got water parks everywhere. Back in the day, you had your Wet n Wild or whatever, and that was about it. We used to go on those field trips, but the kids were not allowed in the wave pool. All right, so that was a prohibited activity, was the wave pool. My whole thing is that when kids are wet and in a swimsuit, they all look the same. So it was very, very difficult to supervise those kids. And then you got them going up and down in a wave pool. It was just a mess. But we talk about this ahead of time, let the kids know, hey, here are rides that we're not going to be able to do. Here, are some activities, the wave pool, that we're not going to be able to do. We have a lot of museums in my area. We're very blessed that we have a lot of different museums that we can go to on field trips. But some of the museums do have activities that they don't let groups in. All right. So you want to, again, make sure you're having these conversations with the kids ahead of time so that you're not dealing with the tantrum and the meltdown in the middle of the museum. All right. So there you go. If you are going to be separating your groups, so sometimes in bigger field trips, we separate into smaller groups. Make sure you plan that in advance and everyone is aware of which group they're going to be accounted for. All right. You don't want to be standing at the amusement park trying to decide who's going to get what kid. You want to do this in advance and try to stay as consistent as possible. All right. Things that the adult needs to do before the field trip, as much as possible, be as planned as possible right there, but know the details of the trip or the activity ahead of time. So I had already mentioned, if it is possible to go to that park, to go to that facility ahead of time so that you're aware of the premises, you're aware of the expectations, that way you're not blindsided by anything. All right. But get the details of the trip ahead of time. Plan out your route. Now, I know that these days we've got our little maps on our phone that take us to our destination. For the purpose of field trips, I still like to print out the map and the route that we will be taking from our school to the field trip destination and back. All right, so how are we going to get back to the school from our destination? And I like to print out the map with our route. Okay, one goes with the driver, one copy stays with the school. All right, this is so important right here. In the event that your vehicle breaks down or you become unaccounted for and your school has to come looking for you, they need to know the route that you were on. Okay, so and don't steer away from that. Don't go into a different, I'm going to take a shortcut. All right, you want to stick to your route. All right, and if you do have to take a detour, make sure you're letting your school know that you're on a different route. All right, we do this even with bus runs that we have in our bus binders and at the facility. We have the exact route that the bus is going to take to get from elementary school to elementary school and back to the facility. And, the driver has to stick to that route. That's pretty important right there. Gather up your forms if you have field trip permission slips, if you have like a confirmation of the field trip destination that you need to take with you. All of these documents that need to be in your emergency binder and part of the field trip, make sure you have those all gathered and organized in advance, all right? I'm a very file folder color coded type of person, so every field trip has a file folder and all of the proper documentation is in it, so I can just grab the folder for that particular field trip and we're on our way. I've also done it we have a summer binder, and so all of your confirmations and instructions and forms for that particular destination are in a binder that stays with the leader or whoever's leading that field trip. All right. If you're taking lunches, have a designated person that's going to gather those lunches and have them organized and loaded. Have those, a good system in place where it's consistent. Those of you that are participating in the federal food program, make sure that the lunches that are on your field trips meet the criteria for your food program expectations. That's kind of a big thing right there. In my organization, because I have 5 different facilities, we typically do field trips together. So all of my schools go to the same places at the same time. If they're able to accommodate our group size. We definitely learned early on to make sure that our lunches are all consistent. You don't want one school with a really good lunch and another school with a really bad lunch, and then you get cranky kids. So we come up with our field trip menus in advance. And this is just me, so this is just a recommendation for you, but I don't have parents send in lunches. We go ahead and make the lunches, put them in a brown bag, and we do everything ourselves. It's just easier, and it's a lot less drama having to worry about, did Billy's mom send him with a lunch, or did she forget, and now I've got a kid without a lunch. And then I've got one kid with a really healthy lunch and another kid with, candy bar and a Dr. Pepper, and then the other kids want the Dr. Pepper, and it's just a mess. We do all the lunches ourselves. Keep it simple, silly. Keep it simple. Just had this conversation with a group yesterday. We gotta work smarter, not harder. All right, especially right now with this darn pandemic that won't go away. Make sure you take ice water and snacks, all right? Even if you're not planning to have a snack or a mealtime on that field trip, make sure you're taking water and snacks in case you break down, all right? You need to have some emergency water and snacks for your kiddos right there. Always confirm your reservation in advance. Make sure that they're still expecting you, that you're going right there. And then post your field trip 3 days in advance so the parents are aware that you're going on that field trip. Now, the way I do it in my organization, we do field trips on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Very, very consistent, very predictable. That way the parents know Tuesday and Thursday is field trip days. The kids know. We don't have to sit there and look at a calendar. Do we have a field trip today or not? Trying to keep up with this staggered calendar. We just keep it very consistent. Tuesday, Thursday is field trip day. That's how we do it, and it makes it very nice, and the parents love it. Okay? All right, so when you're out on that field trip, tips on supervision right here. Make that eye-to-eye contact with the kids. We talked about this earlier. Look them in the eye. I see you. I see you. All right? Make sure you're taking roll often. You're doing your name to face and you're taking roll on your transition sheet often. If you are on an exclusive field trip and you are the only group present, I recommend taking roll every 15 minutes. If you are mixing with the public, so you're at the roller skating rink with a whole bunch of other kids that don't belong to you, then my requirement is that you take roll every 5 minutes. If you're mixing with the public. Now, again, for 2021, probably not going to be doing that. You're probably not going to be taking field trips where you are mixing with the public. Some of you may. I just told you about a group that I spoke with yesterday that went to the zoo. They were obviously mixing with the public. In that case, I would recommend taking roll every 5 minutes. Okay. How many of y'all have been doing this for so long now that even when you go on a family vacation, you're like counting? I do it everywhere I go. I'm constantly counting heads because I've just been doing it for so long. I'm always taking roll. And my friends kind of make fun of me because I'm constantly making sure everyone is accounted for. But it gets in our blood, doesn't it? It does. All right. Let's talk about entering the restroom. Okay. Whenever you are out in the public or you're on a field trip, always make sure that an adult is going into the restroom first and that you're checking out that restroom, making sure that it's safe, making sure that there's not strangers in there, making sure that it's clean and sanitary. All right. A lot of times people are so afraid of the stranger danger, and you do need to be aware of stranger danger. For me, sometimes is the bathroom sanitary. I've walked into some that I would not send a child in there. It's gross. All right. So you want to make sure that you've got that adult that is in there. If you have multiple adults on your field trip, if you can have one person that stays inside of the restroom, I think that's best case scenario. All right, so that again you've got that proper supervision in there. You can still give the children the privacy they need in the stalls, but you've got that supervision just like you were in a classroom. Now, if you are blessed to have a male working at your facility so that the male can check out the men's restroom, once again, making sure that it's safe and sanitary for the children, that's awesome right there. But I understand that some of you do not have a male employee going on every field trip. So in that situation, I trained the female teachers to stand at the door of the men's restroom and female entering, and then she goes in and checks out the restroom. All right. But I still want that restroom checked out, even if you don't have a male employee to check out the men's restroom. All right. Oh, Vicky, I just answered your question. How funny. So there you go. Again, you can never be too safe. You can never be too safe, and I've never had an issue with a female, female entering, supervising a group of kids, and someone will yell back, "Oh, give me a minute," or there's nobody in there. Okay. So there you go. Talk to the children about supervision. Hold them accountable. Hey, you know what? We're going on this field trip today, and there's 24 of us going on this field trip. I need all of you to help me with supervision. So not only am I going to be looking and making sure everyone is safe, but we're going to all watch and listen and keep each other safe. Do y'all think y'all can do that? Let's all keep each other safe and make the kids part of the supervision process. All right. They're usually, as soon as you ask them, hey Tara, can you help me, supervise all of your friends and make sure everyone is accounted for? Yes, Mr. Tim, I will. They love that empowerment right there. So it's good. All right. Try to avoid distractions as much as possible. Keep your attention on the children. That includes this right here. All right. And so there you go. When you are out on your field trip or on your playground or at the public park, wherever you're at right there, again, make sure that you always have quality, positive interactions. Again, you've got a lot of eyes that are on you that aren't normally watching, and you're a moving billboard out there. But we want to make this a good, positive experience for the children, a meaningful experience for the kids right there. When we are out in open areas, whether it's the park or the zoo or your own playground, we tend to want to use a louder tone of voice to be able to get the children's attention. Again, be aware of perception. There is a difference between being assertive and being aggressive. All right. But even an assertive tone of voice can be perceived as being very negative from time to time. So, be very, very conscious of your tone of voice when you're in that open area. And again, this is something that I have struggled with my entire career because I am just a loud person in general. My whole family are loud people, and especially at the beginning of my career, I used to get in trouble a lot. My director would come in and say, "Tim, stop yelling at the kids." And I'm like, "I'm not yelling. We're having fun, but my voice is loud and it carries." And I had to become very, very conscious of that, especially out on the playground and on field trips. Okay. Interactions never stop. They are ongoing. So the best way to keep children safe is engagement. Engagement. All right. So it's ongoing right there. Your interactions should be productive. They should be educational. You're going to be talking about key experiences, talking about what did the kids learn, what did they enjoy. All right. Getting that constant feedback from them right there. I also want to talk about when summer and field trip safety, when we're out on the playground or when we're on a field trip. I want to talk about professionalism. All right. That especially in this day and age, we are making sure that our children and our staff are dressed appropriately. All right. Now, I think we do a pretty good job of setting dress code expectations for our employees. And even in the summer months when they're outside and they're getting hot, they typically do a pretty good job of maintaining that dress code. Where I have an issue here sometimes is with the children, and especially some of your older children that you may be taking on a field trip that decide to want to roll up their shirt and make themselves a little halter top or whatever, or just different things that they do to their clothing. We want to keep it respectful and professional, okay? And sometimes we have to have these conversations in advance, all right? So make sure everyone is addressed appropriately. All right. We typically do summer shirts that we wear on our field trips, so we kind of cover all of this with that expectations. All right. Remember that your children and your staff that are out on the field trip is setting an example of your program. They are creating the integrity and the reputation of your program. Now, y'all can see my sign behind me, a proud early educator. Whenever you're out on a field trip or out on your playground, be proud of your school. Be proud of your group of kids. You are a professional. Act like one. All right? Show the public what you're all about. All right? Now, the amazing thing to me is that when you are proud of your program and you're proud of your kids and you're proud of what you do, that bleeds right into interactions and keeping children safe. The children are going to be more willing to keep it safe when you're passionate about what you're doing. All right? That energy flows into the kids right there. Be courteous, when you're interacting with other individuals, that coordinator or that event person, the ticket counter lady, be courteous, because remember, you got a whole group of children that are watching and listening to your interactions. So we want to be a good role model. Role play ahead of time how you're going to handle conflict situations that come up that are not going your way. We want to be able to practice that composure and so that we're being that good role model for the kids. Avoid confrontations as much as possible. All right? Avoid those confrontations. Childcare licensing does say that we must have a policy that allows parent participation, and we should encourage parent participation. Summertime, summer activities and field trips is a great time to get parents involved in your program. You know, I have a love-hate relationship with this particular topic. I love for our parents to be involved and we appreciate their help, but sometimes they can be more trouble than they're worth. All right. So you need to make sure you lay out some expectations right here. We always like to have a parent volunteer orientation. So before that parent can volunteer to assist in a summer activity or field trip, they have to attend this orientation where we go over, what are the expectations of the parent? What can they do? What can they not do? Go over the child care minimum standards. All right. But you want to make sure this is out there. You can't light up a cigarette. You can't be on your phone. All right. You can't cuss. You can't discipline your own child. They need to be aware of these things. Remember, they don't live and breathe our world like we do. Okay. Make sure they're aware of your program policies. I recommend that you do a criminal background check on them. Now, child care licensing is going to say, unless they're going to be volunteering on a regular or frequent basis, which is defined as more than 2 times in a 30-day period, you don't have to do a criminal background check on them. Remember, you have a right to exceed anything in the minimum standards. I always recommend doing a criminal background check on that volunteer, even if it's a one-time deal. All right. Sometimes that will discourage the volunteer just right there. All right, saying that I'm going to do a criminal background check on you, and you'll mark on there that it's a volunteer. Make sure they are aware that they cannot discipline any of the children, and they cannot discipline their own child. All right, while they're volunteering or helping you with that field trip. They also need to be free of distractions. So if they want to volunteer to go to the zoo with you, they need to be free from their working duties. So they can't be on their phone, taking phone calls or doing emails or text messages, because remember, the rest of the public doesn't realize that that is a parent volunteer. They're going to think it's one of your employees. I've already mentioned that I do like to make t-shirts that have parent volunteer really big on the back so that it's very obvious that it's a parent volunteer. And of course, they cannot be left alone with the children. All right. Let's talk a little bit about, a lot of us this summer in particular are going to have vendors coming to us. All right. Instead of us going on field trips, we're going to have people coming to us. Now, this has been a big trend for several years now. We've had more and more people coming to our facility to entertain the children. This year, it's going to be especially big. Make sure that you've got a good screening process in place with the COVID and the pandemic. You're screening these individuals. I would make sure they have documented health protocols that they are following. All right. Remember, they're not just visiting your program, they're visiting multiple programs. You kind of need to be aware of how many different programs they've been to in the last 2 weeks. Has there been a possible exposure? And if they're mixing and going from program to program and they have been exposed, they're about to expose your program. Y'all need to kind of keep that in mind right there. Now, if they've got some good documented health protocols in place, I think that's fantastic. And you want to keep record of that. Remember earlier at the beginning of the webinar, we talked about you don't ever want to put someone in harm's way, all right, or knowingly put someone at risk. And bringing in a visitor that has been in contact with a lot of people could be perceived as placing someone at risk. But a lot of these folks do have really good established health protocols in place to keep everyone safe. You want that documented, all right? I don't know what your beliefs and convictions are. That's totally up to you what your beliefs and convictions are. But I know that for us, we're paying very close attention. Are these visitors vaccinated? All right. So if I have, a gymnastics person coming in, a dance person, a magician, a puppet show, if I know that they are vaccinated and they can show me documentation that they have been fully vaccinated, I'm going to feel a lot more comfortable with that. All right. And probably going to draft up a document that they sign and I keep on file. all right, that yes, we had this visitor come into our program, and here is the documentation that they were vaccinated, fully vaccinated prior to coming into our program. We're going to make sure that we've got some good steps in place to protect us right here, all right? Now, when you do have these people coming into your programs, remember, if they are counted in child-staff ratio or if they are left alone with the children, they must meet all caregiver qualifications. That includes orientation, pre-service, annual training requirements, etc. So with our summer visitors, probably not going to leave them alone with the kids. All right, your teachers are going to continue to be with the children to maintain those ratios and standards. All right, they should not be disciplining your children. That is still your job as the caregiver. Your visitors or program, people that are coming in should not be doing the discipline. That's your job still. Okay, and then just keep it safe. Keep it safe. All right. Just a little bit of a recap. We're kind of getting towards the end of our material right here. Just some general health and safety. And I know that I've kind of said the same thing over and over again. That's important because these are really important things, and that's why I'm kind of spreading it out, and I am saying some things over and over again. Always have your water, your Gatorade, your snacks, your first aid supplies, trash bags, your emergency binders, all right? Business cards with phone numbers or a list of phone numbers that are applicable to your school, that are available both on the playground and on field trips, all right? We've got to take extra precaution during these summer months when we're doing these activities. Like I said earlier, this emergency binder needs to be on the caregiver's body at all times. So in a backpack or in a bag, in their hand, all right? So we've got this on us all the time in the event of an emergency. No matter what your plan is, all right, keep the children's best interest as a priority, all right? And, I do tell my teachers that go on field trips and my managers that go on field trips, we may have this planned field trip that you're going to the museum or you're going to the roller skating rink, but if you get there and you feel like this is not a good situation for the kids, you have the authority to make a decision to come back, all right? Or, whatever it needs to be right there. I say the roller skating rink, I feel bad for them. We've been in situations where we had a reservation, they knew we were coming, and we've gotten to the roller skating rink and it was too crowded. Like there were so many people and so many kids there, people couldn't even skate. It was so overcrowded. We left. All right, it was not a safe situation for the children. Or this has been many, many years ago, but we went on a field trip to the Firefighter Museum, and the pictures, looked really cool. This was going to be a fantastic field trip. When we got there, not so much. It was like in the middle of Ghettoville. The building was falling apart. The doors were locked. We had to knock on the door and woke the tour guide up. He's all like, oh, hey, come on in. And he's like flipping on lights, getting ready to give us our tour. Yeah, we left. All right. That was a funny situation. Looking back on it now, it was funny. It wasn't funny at the time. But we got there and 5 minutes after being there, we decided this is not a good situation. We got to get these kids out of here. So always keep the children's best interest at heart. All right. Yes. Billy is saying teachers should always be involved while visitors are in the school. Absolutely. Even on field trips, y'all need to be active participants right there. That kind of takes me to my next bit of information, third-party responsibilities, all right? So when you have a visitor coming into your program or you're going on a field trip where you have a tour guide, when you have a field trip attendant, all right, like the bowling alley. Typically, when we go to the bowling alley, you have employees of the bowling alley that are down there assisting the children and coaching the children and helping them with their bowling activity. You still need to be an active participant. I will tell y'all, back when I was a district manager for a very large childcare organization, I actually fired an entire group of teachers one time because they went to the bowling alley with the group of kids, and while the kids were down there in the bowling pit and the bowling alley attendants were dealing with the kids, and all of the employees were in the snack bar area having themselves a big old party, and totally left the children unattended with the bowling alley attendants, and wasn't paying any type of attention, and there was an incident, and yeah, we fired every one of them. All right. So don't rely on your host or your third party person to manage your field trip. You still need to be actively involved in that. Okay. You still need to be supervising. You still need to be interacting. Like I've already mentioned, never expose the child's name to the public. Sometimes I've had the field trip attendant say, I want a complete list of the children's first and last names. No, you don't. All right. You're not going to get that from me. And if you do have a confrontation with the tour guide or the field trip attendant, you need to avoid that, and you need to be able to have the authority to say, we're done here. All right. We took a tour of the ballpark one time, and it was this little old man who obviously, this was his retiree job, giving tours of the ballpark. And, not only was he very aggressive with the children, but he wanted to grab them, like it was his own kids or own grandkids. No, sir. Hey, you can't touch my kids and you can't be aggressive with them. And very sadly, we had to exit the ballpark tour in the middle of the tour. Now, I could have ran and gotten a manager and said, hey, you need to do something about this tour guide. But doing that in front of the children wasn't the time or the place. All right. We went ahead and got the kids out of there, got them away from this individual, and then, made phone calls and dealt with the situation from there. All right. But avoid those confrontations, especially in front of the children. All right. Know your center's policy on weather. Right now, you still have the ability to define weather permits in your program. We've kind of already talked about, I like to look at heat index and wind chill, do a sliding scale to where you're still getting them outside. But be aware of your weather situation. Some of you do the ozone alerts, and you have different policies and processes for the different ozone alerts. All right. That's going to be different for every single one of us. And right now, with childcare regulations, your program still has the ability to write this policy that is applicable to your program. I do suspect that this is going to change probably in 2022. I think that we're going to have some different regulations on weather permits. But as of right now, your policy gets to define that. All right. We talked about sunscreen already and the appropriate way to deliver that sunscreen. The question, so at the bowling alley, do you put a number up instead of the child's name? We've done number assignments, or I've done just the child's initials. Usually the initials are what we do. But that's a good point right there, because we don't want to expose the child's name to the public, and then putting their name on that big TV screen could be a risk. Now, if I am on an exclusive field trip and we are the only group in that bowling alley, which happens from time to time, then I would have no problem, putting at least just their first name or a nickname on there. But again, if you're mixing with the public, I would be very careful in those situations. All right. So yeah, it's just the initial, but typically we just do the initials right there. All right. Just kind of, again, going back to basic first aid. If you do have an accident involving a child, remember, if it's a serious accident, don't move the child. Make sure that you've got one adult that is attending to the injured child. The other adult needs to maintain the supervision of the rest of the group. I've seen this happen so many times, especially on field trips and during summer activities, that you have a child that gets injured, you have a child that has heat exhaustion, and every single adult is tending to that child, and then no one is supervising the rest of the group. So talk about this ahead of time. If we have an injury or an illness, who is going to be the designated adult to tend to that situation, and who is going to be the designated individuals to continue the interaction and supervision with the rest of the kids. All right, so that's important right there. Remember that children feel your emotions. If you panic, they're going to panic. All right, especially if it is a serious injury and there's a lot of blood or a lot of vomit involved, be very conscious of your response or your reaction to that situation. We don't want to panic the child or scare them right there. All right. We talked about vehicle emergencies already. Again, have that contact information. If you need to flag someone down, hey, please call my program. Nowadays, you've got your communication device on your vehicle, so your cell phone or your smartphone, you can contact them. But make sure you have a plan in place in case you're knocked out. All right, and someone needs to be able to identify, how to contact the vehicle. What I like to do is we usually have a nice sheet of paper that has our program's name, director's name, contact phone number, address, and in case of an emergency, contact this individual at this number immediately. And I like to contact paper this in the bus. Okay, so if you're driving the mini buses, right above the driver, you've got that big white area, at the top of the bus. We usually post this contact paper right up there to where, again, if you have a vehicle accident or an incident and the adult is unconscious, whoever is showing up will see this and be able to contact that director. Now, your phone number is probably on the side of the bus too, but I like to have it inside of the bus as well. All right. Very good. All right. So that was a lot of information on summer and field trip safety. I hope this was informative for all of you, and you wrote some stuff down and you learned something new. Like I said at the beginning of the webinar, we're going to post a link for you to complete your online worksheet for those of you that are needing that certificate of completion. That should already be posted on Facebook, so if you just go to the top of our page or refresh your browser, you can see the link to get to your online worksheet. There are two different links. If you are paying for your certificate with a credit card, you will click on the link that says Online Worksheet Paying with Credit Card. If your school has set up an online account with us and you have a 5-digit account number, then you will click on the link that says Online Worksheet Paying with an account number. If you don't have an account number or you have no idea what I'm talking about right now, don't click on that link. All right. If you don't intend on paying with a credit card, don't click on that link. All right. So just follow the instructions. It's pretty easy. There are 10 questions about today's material that is on the online worksheet. If you missed any of the material today, so you came in late or you got knocked off or whatever, you can always go back and rewatch this from the beginning. All of our videos are posted on our Facebook page under the videos tab, and also will be posted on our website. I will try to have this posted on our website by the end of today, might be tomorrow morning. All right. Once you do submit your online worksheet, I usually respond as quickly as possible. Today is Saturday, so it is the weekend, and I like to enjoy my weekends just like you. Might be a little bit of time before you get that worksheet, but usually within 24 hours you get it from me. Okay, so that's kind of how that works right there. Awesome Blossom, thank you all for spending your Saturday morning with me. I appreciate you. We're going into a unknown summer. We don't know what the pandemic is going to look like. It looks optimistic. We're feeling optimistic, but we don't want to let our guard down. We want to continue to keep it safe and healthy. Don't take things for granted. Don't become complacent. All right. And make decisions that are in the best interest of the children in your program. Make those safe decisions for your program, especially when it comes to summer planning. All right. But enjoy the summer. You and your children deserve to have some fun. Let's let go of some of this stress and anxiety and enjoy, the funnest part of the year, in my opinion. So there you go. All right, everyone. Thank you. I appreciate all of you so much for doing what you do. I admire all of you so much. And have a wonderful, safe summer. And I will see all of you very, very soon. Take care and enjoy the rest of your weekend, too. All right. Bye.